I get the fancy microphone. This is going to be so weird. Welcome along to Comic Stage here at MCM. Welcome along. First and foremost, are you enjoying MCM so far? Are you having a good day? Yeah, you see, we're just slowly getting started into the weekend. That's what we'd like to see. My name's Len Sultana. I'm a podcaster and moderator, and basically I have been asked to talk to these fine gentlemen on this stage. First and foremost, I want to kind of introduce you to this grand collection of English creators, and I think we'll go down the line one at a time. If you could introduce yourselves, and as if you were at a dinner party, explain who you are and what you do.
Hi,
if you were chatting somebody up, go for it.
No.
Yes.
No. No, Alex, no. Do you come here often? What's your shoe size? No, okay. I'm Alex Paknadel. I'm a writer from the south, live in the north. My first book, Arcadia, came out through Boom in 2015. There was a follow-up in 2016 called Turncoat. Been working on various Titan licenses ever since Doctor Who, Assassin's Creed with Dan here. And my latest creator-owned book, FRIENDO, just came out through Vault Comics, issue 1. Please pick it up. It's
very good.
Thank you.
It is very good.
Yeah. This is exactly how I chat someone up as well, which I think speaks volumes. You know, about what? What have I got coming up? I'm doing an event book with Valiant called Incursion, which if you come to the Valiant panel later on today, you'll hear all about. And now I'll hand over to Ryan.
I don't know about that. Congrats.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Sullivan. I write, I've written Void Trip for Image Comics. Is it not loud? Is that it? So I'm not used to these.
A little bit of feedback.
Testing. Okay, we're good. Yeah, so I wrote Void Trip for Image Comics. My new book, Fearscape, is out through Vault. That's the same people who do FRIENDO. I've also done some stuff for Titan Comics, such a lot of licensed stuff. So Evil Within, Dark Souls, and Warhammer comic. And that's me.
Dan Waters. I did an image book called Limbo with Captain Wingard. I did a bunch of Titan stuff, Assassin's Creed with Alex, Wolfenstein, a couple of Dark Souls shorts. My current creator-owned book, also through Vault, there's patterns here you might start to notice, is Deep Roots. Issue 4 of that's just come out, issue 5 is out next month, as these things tend to go. And I'm also just had launched the first issue of the new Lucifer book for SANDMAN. Oh, don't you? First issue of Lucifer for the SANDMAN Universe, which came out last week.
I'm Ram V. And I too have an image book called Paradiso. Volume 2 of which will be out next month. I've got my next creator-owned book called The Savage Shores, which is also out in Vault. Apart from that, I've done Quake Champions comic at Titan, and I've got a story in the Batman Secret Files book, which is out in a week.
Excellent stuff.
I've heard of Batman.
I've heard of Batman. Yeah. He's known. I think we're also missing somebody, because there was somebody who was going to be on the panel, which is Casper Wingard. And I think the reason why I bring up his name is because you are very much a gang of this British creatives. Like you say, your name keeps coming up as almost like a linchpin of this particular group. Yeah, I'd say that. I'd say that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
That's fair enough. Which kind of then brings us on to the topic of conversation, which is White Noise Studios and why White Noise exists and what it's actually for. Where did it come from? Where did White Noise start? Is it those two?
I was approached by these guys.
Fair enough.
So I think it was 2016. It was Stock Bubble 2016, and I had just put out my first self-published comic called Black Mama, and Dan and Casper had Limbo out with Image, and I think that was the first time I also met Brian at the same convention. I think we realized that we enjoyed the same kind of books and we liked working on similar kinds of comics. Our influences came from similar places, and we decided that it would be beneficial to, exchange our work with each other, take feedback, and it really started off as an exercise in that kind of critique and opinions that you trust from people that you know are good at what they do. I think close to a year later, we'd also met Alex, and we decided to formalize that.
Well, yeah, it was initially the plan was for an anthology, which never actually materialised. But once we started passing work back and forth, it crystallised into a unit.
Was it something that, like you say, it was more of an informal gathering of minds? Did White Noise have a title at that point, or was it just a bunch of guys meeting up at conventions and kind of sharing ideas and sharing? I mean, what were you sharing? Were you sharing ideas?
It was scripts.
Yeah.
Like, because we were all sort of new and emerging writers, and we were sharing scripts with each other anyway, because we realised we had a similar sort of, I don't know, that's what I'm saying, a similar appreciation of certain things within comics, similar influences in terms of what we read. And because of that, we used each other for script feedback and idea generation. Like, is this good? Is it bad? Because if you ask your friends, they say everything you do is great. But if you ask other creators, they say, actually, that really sucks, or it's really good, depending.
You really need to fix this.
You really need to stop writing to glorify fanfic.
You need to stop writing.
I like that you said that to me for the first time on the public place.
Tough love, Brian.
But yeah, so it was informal, and then we called ourselves White Noise, and it still is quite informal. We're not like a company or an imprint or anything. We just
But I mean, if you give yourself a name, you're clearly you're setting a stall out. You've got a form of ambition for something down the line, and
that's fair.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you are working with some of the best titles, with some of the best minds and the best creatives out there. But to then pull yourself together as an informal unit, I think that it's a very much a statement of intent. Was it something that you kind of had an idea for a regular sort of like coming together, or was it just at conventions at this point? How informal was this?
I think it was more an exchange of work, more than conventions. And I think part of the reason for sort of coming together and giving our studio a name was more than, go out there and say, this is who we are. We wanted people to look at the work and go, hold on, all of this work that's good, all of this work that we enjoy is coming from the same place. So that must be an interesting thing. And then that leads to a certain kind of engaging with the readers that started reading our books. And now, obviously, 2 years down the line, we all have done work that has gotten noticed in the industry, that has a readership. We're doing work on characters that have had a history. And so, apart from the readership enjoying our books, clearly there's also a recognition from publishers that, hold on, these guys all come from the same place and are all doing interesting work. And so, I don't know who it was that mentioned, I think it might have been Karen Gillen who mentioned that it's a scene. There's always been scenes in comics.
Yeah.
And
you see, I think that's a word I wanted to use in my introduction, but I didn't want to because I thought that I would get some really seriously evil looks from at least 2 or 3 of you calling you a scene, calling you a movement. I think that would be a little bit. That's too far.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we want to call ourselves that, but it is always interesting to see good work and interesting creators seem to come up at the same time from the same places.
There's definitely a commonality in the quality and the tone of the books you do. I mean, is there say a couple of words that you would describe the work that you do as White Noise? Any things any kind of like touchstones that you would go to? to kind of like, to sum up what the work that you are currently doing. Alex?
Ultimately, I think with a lot of our stuff, I think it's all, we try to be culturally aware, right? In the sense that comics are at their best, I think in our view, I hope I can speak for all of us, comics are best when they speak outside of themselves, when the medium isn't just speaking to itself and when it's having a conversation with the culture in general, right?
Sure.
And certainly, you know, one of the first pieces of advice I was given, you know, when I wanted to start writing was, you know, not stop writing comics, but, you know, be curious and be intellectually and culturally kind of omnivorous, right? And we are all that. And so, I mean, that's not to say that, you know, you read our stuff that it's going to be, you know, it's really kind of impenetrable. It's not. But we're certainly, we're trying to make it sort of culturally acute and, if you like, almost kind of aware of its surroundings, I guess. Is that fair?
Yeah, and also the sort of comics we like making tend to not pull inspiration from other comics, because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of sort of
sure.
the snake eating its own head in comics sometimes, and we want to pull from, say, like novels or film or something that's a visual. Novel isn't a visual medium, but you know, we're pulling from other influences than your typical. Hey, I grew up reading this comic and I want to now write it myself. We're not necessarily that way.
We love that stuff as well.
I mean, yeah, we do it, but I mean, the driving force is
there's also this element of missing the kind of books that we all grew up on. I mean, where has the vertigo of yesteryear gone? I think that was a sentiment that we all had. Is that
the end goal? No, I'm not going to talk end goals, because we're talking end goals.
End goal is death.
End goal is death. There's a finality there. Okay, let's look at the next step. I mean, is vertigo the kind of like the linchpin amongst your reading?
I think it was certainly an influence, an important influence for everyone involved. And so I think we looked at each other and went, where are these comics now? Where do I find that thing that I read and I really enjoyed? Where's the current equivalent of that? And when we realized that they weren't there, we just said, well, we should start making them.
I find it interesting as well that that commonality of what you're talking about in what you bring to your work is not just for the things that you do for company-owned products, properties such as Assassin's Creed, such as SANDMAN, but also for your own creator-owned properties as well. How important would you say the creator-owned element is to White Noise? In terms of that, is that eventually going to be something that you feel is going to be the driving force to what White Noise will be?
I think,
or does the company stuff also come under that umbrella?
I think that's a tough question, in that we all might want to do different stuff and do different things. There's different kinds of licensed work, frankly. There's licensed work where it's very sort of guided, and there's other stuff where you get your freedoms and you get the weight of, the actual freedom of having an established world and not having to establish like 101 things yourselves and just getting to put a spin on something. So I don't think, at least I wouldn't ever really want to stop doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first things we talked about was also that White Noise, we didn't exist for White Noise existed for us. So it existed to enable us to do whatever we wanted. And I mean, I'd be lying if I said, oh, I only want to do creator-owned stuff. But I'd equally also be lying if I said, oh, I just want to work on existing properties. I'd also be lying if I said I just want to do comics all the time. So I think White Noise exists to enable us to do whatever we want to do, and so it will mutate and change when intentions of the people within the studio mutate and change.
Sure. When you have something created like White Noise, where it's a collective of minds and creators to create stuff, it's usually under the banner of a certain publisher. But that doesn't seem to be the case with yourself, because you are all doing work for various publishers. But the one publisher that does seem to keep coming up is Vault. Is Vault the unofficial publisher of White Noise?
No. We like working with them and they're great. And we've put out some of the titles that we're most proud of through them. But I wouldn't say that we are anyone's other than ourselves. I mean, we've all done work for Titan. Again, I'm very proud of the work I've done there. I'm sure we all are. But White Noise is us. And the fact that we're
rather than a hierarchy.
It's not that's the reason we keep it intangible, is so that it can't be attached to anything. But I do love Vault, don't get me wrong, but we're not any publishers.
Okay.
They don't own us.
They don't. You see, I am not a number man. There's a real kind of prisoner vibe to the whole thing. You're very standing alone against the man, as it were. But
no, we like money. the man's our friend.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think it helps to also have your own identity as a creator. Whether that is something that is individual or something that is associated as a studio. But it helps to be your own thing rather than be someone who's published by a publisher. Because, I mean, 10 years down the line, you know, your publisher is still always going to be there. You know, people are always going to remember DC, Marvel, Vault, all of these guys. But the question is, do you associate the work with the publisher, or do you associate the work with the guys who created it? And I always think that no matter where you publish your work, it has to be associated with the creators. And so it's important for us to be known as White Noise and to stand out as White Noise.
Sure.
I mean, one thing I would say as well is, I mean, and I don't mean this in, you know, not in an aggressive sense, but I think it's fair to say that, you know, amiable competition is a part of it as well, you know. I mean, in the sense that there are some formal and character stuff that these guys do that just kind of takes my breath away. And
I think that's what drives, for myself, that's what defines, I mean, I was trying to get out of you what kind of defines your work. I think character is very much the heart of what all of you do. The world is almost incidental. It's kind of like, it's a tapestry which the character works is the foremost. That's what kind of like drives all of the work that you do.
Which is something I would say, and this is, you know, in all humility, this is something that I think personally I've kind of picked up from these guys. You know, I mean, I used to be very much a kind of world building guy. You know, there's a lot of kind of portraiture going on. And it wasn't until I started looking over these guys' scripts and of course the final product that I started really kind of pushing myself. And that's one of the things that this kind of association is doing, is, you know, I'm taking more risks than I used to, and I'm as weird and kind of, you know, high schooly as it sounds, like I'm trying to impress them. We're all trying to impress each other, and we're our first audience. You know what I mean? And that can only be productive and dynamic. You know?
Well, that was going to be my next question then, because that was going to be my next question, as to what you felt you have learned from each other. What have you? Because I think one of the most underrated roles in comics is that of an editor. It's the person who guides and it draws the path of what a comic ultimately becomes. You are at the end of the day, you're each other's editors. What have you learned from each other in that role, would you say?
It's a bit of a difficult question to answer, because we're
good.
All,
I like those.
Well, we're all in touch with each other constantly, so our influences and our ideas kind of bleed into each other's work, I think. There's also very much the case of when you're working on a script versus when you're reading someone else's script. When you're reading someone else's script, you're reading it as a critiquer, and so it's easy to find holes and find problems or suggest changes. But when you're doing your own work, you're far too close to it. And so that's really useful to have someone you trust read it and point out why something works or why something doesn't work. So there's certainly a lot that I've picked up from showing my scripts to all three of these guys. For me, when I talk to Alex, I usually get like a bigger picture feedback. Oh, is this what you're doing? Or is there a theme? Is there an underlying conversation that you're having here? Which often, you know, I wouldn't have thought about. I'm probably doing it instinctively, but when Alex pointed out, it's suddenly there in front of me and I go, oh yeah, okay, I can now work with this. And that's not something you would get from, you know, if you read a review or something. You know, talking to Brian, I always get like interesting formalist ideas from him. And I think Dan offers insight into some of my own characters. And he goes, oh, these guys should be arguing with each other, not agreeing with each other all the time. So stuff like that. I think it's harder to categorize. That's exactly what that is, but...
Okay, while he's not here, and you can talk about him behind his back, what does Casper bring to the group?
Art. Well, Casper's the only artist here, so does this panel look alright? What are you doing, Rob? Leave it to your artist.
No, but to follow what Graham said, we do all work with editors, and they are all fantastic. But they only do one of our books, whereas we show each other all of our scripts. So if there's commonalities in our writing that show up a lot, that's what I've found most useful, is that they'll say, Ryan, you always do this, consider not, and then I'll tweak as appropriate. I mean, that's what I find most useful about writing most. To the point now where I almost don't need to show them scripts. I'm so used to what their feedback would be. I looked at, oh, Ram would say this about that.
Yes, you did.
Ram would say, I don't show you my scripts, do I?
Huh?
What?
Are we breaking up?
This is it, guys.
You're seeing the end of White Noise before he's even gotten...
This is the end game, death.
Fair enough.
You like that, didn't you?
Something that I wanted to ask as well is about then some of the company-owned properties that you are working on, such as Assassin's Creed, such as Doctor Who, such as Sandman. That those things are very...
And Batsman.
And Batsman, of course. I do apologize. But those are properties then that you have to bring your own voice to. How much can you share then with the rest of the group? Because I can imagine, with, say with Sandman, it was those several forms that you have to fill out to deal with that property.
I mean, yeah, less so with certain things, but also once things are sort of underway and on the swing, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit leniency. And
we were trying to get pages out of him like you wouldn't believe, and he's sitting there, the guy's going, guys, I've signed an NDA. No, but come on, it's us. No, I've signed an NDA. Yeah, but really, what does that actually mean? No, I've signed an NDA. You held. You held firm.
But also, I think if it's part of your process, you're allowed to use whoever's part of your process to write your script. If you need to show it to someone, and if that's part of what you do, they've hired you for that, so you show it to that person. And I think there's an element of trust involved amongst all of us. So, I mean, we've done work at the same publisher, obviously with me and Dan, potentially at the same publisher again next year. There'll be multiple people involved. And so there is definitely that element of, okay, we've built this wall, information wall, if you will, where beyond which you can share stuff, but there's also an element of, if you do share stuff, understand that it's not as, you know, creators working at a company, but as, you know, a writer and a confidant who's being shown stuff because they trust each other.
And like, I actually, specifically with Sandman, I remember certain moments where it was sort of like, I'd get stuck on a thing, and so it's not a whole thing of like, I'm just putting pages on the internet, but like calling up one of these guys and going like, I have this problem with, you know, it's this kind of character thing, or it's this kind of plot thing, and I can't see how to fix it. Help. And they can do that. Do you know what I mean? It's not really a matter of NDAs, it's stories, it's breaking stories.
Fair enough. Certainly the vibe that I'm getting from White Noise is very, like we've talked about Vertigo, also talking about image as well, that kind of like bringing together of talent. But certainly when we've seen, say with DC Young Animal, not to take away from what those books have become, there is this risk of a kind of flattening of the titles, in that every voice then starts to feel that it's all influencing across the board. This universality, that's not even a word. Universality? No, it's not even a word. This kind of, this could be. It could be. It is now. This kind of bringing together, but almost diluting of ideas. Is that a risk of that when you're all coming together? Oh, Alex is over that.
I don't think so. For one reason. No, actually, for several reasons. But principally, it's one stream, but there are a lot of tributaries.
Okay.
Right. The influences that we draw upon are very wide and very varied. So one of us will be looking at the news, another person will be sort of it's very we're not being exposed to the same stimuli, because we're all sort of curious about different things. So we're constantly bringing different things to the table. So, I mean, this is going to sound really kind of pretentious, and I don't mean for it to, but in a sense,
I've been making up words. Don't worry about it.
But from year to year, if you try and keep your ear to the ground and keep your mind open, you're not the same writer from one year to the next. So we're never really kind of entering the room as the same people kind of anyway, because we've been exposed to different things and we've been off having our own different adventures. And
there's too much stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
For us to talk about the same things. There's too much stuff to make and do and look at and listen to.
And I think we also all realize that we're all writers and we have our own voices, and we do the things that we do well. And so when you get a feedback from a writer that you trust, that you respect, more often than not, it will be feedback that allows you that level of freedom to do your own thing. It won't be the kind of feedback that says, no, this is wrong, stop doing it. It'll be, have you thought about this? And so there's always that room to let you be who you are, but still sort of make you think about your own choices more than tell you what to do. So thinking about your own choices is never going to dilute the work.
Okay.
The white noise, and I use the term advisedly, there are sick buckets at various exits, but the white noise brand, for want of a better word, but
I actually felt all four of you wince then. That was impressive.
Yeah.
Just go.
Everyone's diaphragm just flipped. But
the white noise ideology.
Our marketing plan.
But it was never intended to be, if you like, a guarantee of uniformity of content. It is supposed to underwrite uniformity of quality.
Fair enough.
So you're not going to get the same books, but they're all going to be to the same standard.
Okay. You've got a title, White Noise Studios. Do you see something being published under that brand with White Noise on the cover?
I mean, we started the studio with the idea of doing
the anthology, yeah.
While that's not happened over 2 years, I mean, and understandably so, we've all done interesting work elsewhere.
The whole thing's written.
Yeah, we've genuinely got scripts at least, so it'll happen at some point, I'm sure. But I mean, also at this point, considering where we are in our careers, does it make sense for us to be doing just another anthology? So it'll have to be something that stands out, that is uniquely white noise.
Plus, I don't think any of us want to be a publisher. There's that too.
I don't think that's the intent at all.
Having been on the other side of the creative process, having worked for a publisher in-house, I'm not sure that's where I would want to go. And that would be the worry if white noise became a thing and then we published it ourselves. It might, the joy of writing would go, because suddenly there would be brand, there would be product, and all these sort of adult things.
The moment white noise appears on a t-shirt, you are absolutely screwed. Is basically what you're saying.
I wanted us to get matching t-shirts, but they
time to drop the mic and move on.
We could put it on the back of a leather jacket.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Okay, so if you were going to create the anthology, I'm not going to say if, when it happens, guys. Come on, let's go for.
I feel like we're being corralled here.
No, let's go. Listen, when it's going to happen? What kind of? I mean, what? Okay, could you describe the kind of story that you would like to put in the anthology?
I mean,
have you had any ideas about that?
We've already written the story, so we know
wow.
there.
Okay.
So, I think because the original intention was to start with that anthology, we took on just the idea of white noise and what that meant as a subject. So I think I did a story about personal relationships and how the intensity of that relationship is lost when you have too much white noise. I know.
Was it yourself that came up with the name, by the way?
No, so this is a weird story. So we were sat in a pub at a table, and we went, well, what do we call ourselves? And we had, you know, a bunch of people sitting across the table in a pub. You're going to have some really stupid ideas for names. But we had a novel from which I lent to Dan, which was a Don DeLillo novel with the title White Noise. And so we said we should just call it that.
We stole it, yeah.
Okay.
Someone else's brand.
I suggested The Best Friends Forever, and they rejected it.
Bless.
Maybe it's a subtitle.
Alright.
Work friends.
Alex, the kind of story that you would like to see in a white noise anthology?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's already written.
You did the story about the mall.
Yeah, I did a shopping mall. I did a shopping mall, a story set in a shopping mall, and during a snowstorm, and sort of the people in there revert to sort of various kind of atavistic behaviours, and that was, I mean, a lot of my stuff tends to sort of focus on the sort of intersections of sort of consumerism and sort of breakdown of the social contract, and that was very, I'm going to do it twice, on brand for me.
How often does white noise kind of come together? Because you are all extremely busy at this point. I mean, you've all got projects on the go, but how often does...
we talk every day.
Does the collaboration...
We found this thing called the internet.
Is it done by Slack or Facebook Messenger?
Yeah, along those lines. There's a couple of different threads which, you know, why would you not put it all in like 6 different places?
Just there's the ones I'm invited to and the ones I'm not invited to.
When it comes to...
we've got the main group, and then we've got the group which is the 3 of us. You know, each
the proper one
to bitch about the other one.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to turn around and say, yeah, there's this subgroup that no one really kind of... Yeah, oh crap, you're here, I shouldn't have told you that. Okay, that's fair enough. When it comes to the collective then, would it be something that you would bring in a new member to the group? I mean, how often do you... What's your recruitment process, guys?
I don't think so.
No, it's far too... No, it'd be far too political.
Am I kind of putting far too much formality on this?
Well, it was just the 4 of us, and then Casper sort of just muscled his way in. Because he did covers for all of us, and he's like, I'm part of White Noise now. And we were like, well, okay, we can't say no, so...
Fair enough. Okay, I do want to open this up every time we do panels here at MCM, so if there's any questions that you want to put to the guys, especially when it comes to about writing scripts, about putting, the title of the panel is putting ideas into comics. Any questions that you want to put to the guys? Do you want to put your hands up and anything you want to ask of this creative bunch? As everyone looks around at each other and total silence. Oh no, we have a couple of questions. Okay, we'll start at the back, sir. You're nice and loud, and your name and your question, please.
Hey, I'm James. Do you think it's necessary these days for writers to kind of gang together?
Is it necessary in today's comics to have this kind of support system, this creative team?
I mean, I think historically writers in any field have always had their own support systems. All we did was, you know, give it a name.
Yeah. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis had one.
Yeah,
and the Vienna Circle with Wittgenstein and all those guys?
So many, so many. I mean, Twain and Tesla hung out together.
We're kind of just carrying on the legacy.
So, I think there are definitely benefits to it in terms of just, forget the industry stuff, but just in terms of the quality of work. I think we'll always be better. And I know you get a lot of writers who advise you that, oh, I don't share my work. I maintain its purity until it's done, and then I send it out into the world. There is something to be said for that. Don't share your work around until you're ready to. But it's always useful to have one or two voices that you trust implicitly in terms of their critical eye. That always helps the quality of work. And as far as the industry is concerned, yeah, I mean, there's definitely more power in being part of a group of people who are all at the same or similar places in their careers coming up. You support each other by sort of foregrounding each other's work. I mean, tongue-in-cheek, white noise, there's so much stuff out there. It's very hard for work to stand out. But I have my readership, and if I really like the work coming out from Dan, Ryan, and Alex, I'm happy to sort of foreground that, and they're happy to do the same things for me. And so that kind of support, at least in terms of creating awareness about your work, is very important as well. So there's definitely advantages. I don't know if it's necessary, but it doesn't hurt.
I don't know if it's necessary, but I don't think it's done all that much. I mean, there are more kind of formal setups, like Man of Action.
Sure.
So Joe Casey, Joe Kelly, Dwayne McDuffie.
Yep.
So it's been done before, and it's been done along sort of more formal lines. But I think it's a weird thing in the sense that artists, I think historically, I mean, I may be way off beam here, but I think artists sort of artists tend to be, they don't tend to be sort of peacocking, sort of rampaging ego monsters in the way that writers can, right? Let's be candid, right? But if you can
You've met Kieran Gillen, right?
Kieran's like the sweetest Canadian. You could not have picked a worse example.
I know. I Josh, obviously.
But we're all away in sort of our own in our offices, right? Sort of frantically sort of beavering away, and it's very isolated, and it's very isolating. So purely in terms of self-interest, just to kind of keep you sane, it's just good to be able to sort of reach out to someone in the middle of the day. I mean, this is one of the reasons. The reason I love it is I know that I'm not just sat there staring into a hall of mirrors, because that's the danger. If you're not kind of out in the world, and writing is almost the opposite of being in the world.
Sure.
Then there's a danger that everything just becomes a highly polished surface. Whereas if you have people that you can trust, like I said, I don't think it's necessary, but I mean, I can only speak for myself, but it's been useful, and I think I can say without ego, I have become better as a result of my association with these guys. So there's my self-interest.
Fair enough. Whereabouts in the process do you kind of share with each other's? I mean, is it at idea level, or is it script level, or I mean, is it across the board?
Both, yeah. Concepts, we tend to bounce back and forth. It's just like, oh, I've got an idea for what I'm going to do with this thing, or whatever. We'll check that it's good, and not utterly illegible and nonsensical. That's
the point.
Yeah, and that's the point.
Is there a democracy to the advice? I'm thinking Python here. The whole idea of you've got the one person that says, no, actually that's not a great idea, and you've got the three that have, is there an overriding 3-to-1 rule, or?
That's nothing. Again, nothing that formal.
Nothing that formal.
Yeah, it's someone,
But it's also, I mean, as we said, the studio exists for us. So if you want to do something, you're going to do it. The question is, what bits of advice do you want to take? So sometimes, I'll put out an idea and I'll get 3 different pieces of advice from all 3 of these guys. and you know, maybe I just needed to hear them and summarily reject them all and do whatever I wanted to do. But it exists for me. So.
They become the voices in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. Yourself, sir?
I'm James. And I was just wondering, what's it like to display or publish or upload your work to places like the internet or places like conventions to get feedback or criticism from those audiences and deciding whether or not you should keep going with this project or not?
So your question is, do we listen to feedback from readers and critics?
Do you publish or upload your stuff to the internet or other places?
I think, yeah, it's the work in progress, I'm guessing. Yeah. Okay. So the question really is, while the guys talk amongst themselves and kind of draw inspiration from each other and get ideas and guidance from each other, do they take it to the next level and share that with the wider world? Or is it very much gang mentality? It's very much closed, would you say?
I would say I don't take ideas to the public and ask what they think. I'll put up perhaps sample art, but I won't really take the feedback on board. Even when the book's out and people say what they think, I don't really take it on board because, you know, I write a certain story. Some people have one thought about it, some people have a different one, but that's on them. You know, once it's out of me, it's done. You know?
Sure.
I think to let the feedback come the other way would to fundamentally misunderstand the concept of publishing writing, in my view.
I mean, I think there's also an inherent ego that comes with creating work. I mean, when you say you're a writer, part of what you're doing, if you had to distill it down to something, is you say, I have an idea, I'm going to turn it into a work of art, and then I want people to pay to see it or experience it. When you're essentially doing that, you're already making the assumption that whatever you have to say is of value to someone who's going to read it. And so democratizing that process kind of takes away from the sanctity of the concept behind creating the art. This is something I have to say, not something that I may want to say depending on what other people think. So there is that balance, which is why I said, you know, a lot of writers don't really share their work around. I think the difference between that and what we do is when I send something to these guys, I'm not going to get their opinion on what they think of the work. I'm going to get their opinion on where they think my craft could be better. So it's not about, I'm not asking people if I should make, you know, if I were a carpenter, I'm not asking people if I should make a chair or a table. But if I made a chair and it had, you know, the fourth leg off by an inch, then these guys will come to me and say, your fourth leg's off by an inch. So that kind of advice is useful, but in my experience, when you put your work out to the public and you're taking feedback, more often than not, you're getting people's personal biases of what work they like and what they don't like. It's very rare to have objective feedback about the craft of your work when you put it up to the public.
I think that's where the licensed stuff and the creator-owned, the distinction between the licensed stuff and the creator-owned stuff can come into play, though. I mean, in the sense that with the licensed stuff that I'm doing, and I think that we're all doing it, we're all very interested in fan feedback, because when you're dealing with franchises that you don't own, there's much more kind of stakeholder engagement that's kind of expected, and rightly so. You know, if a fan is reading Assassin's Creed, then they have a certain set of expectations, and I mean, we certainly felt working on that license that, you know, we needed to listen and respond, albeit through kind of Ubisoft and Titan. But yeah, I mean, certainly I think for creator-owned work, that, you know, as Ram just said, you know, that's straight out of our brains and onto your plate, you know. I mean, not you know, I don't mean this to sound callous, but it's up to the fans whether they buy it or not.
Sure.
But that's kind of where it ends, you know what I mean? But yeah, with licensed stuff, I think absolutely, yeah, you know, I think it behooves creators to listen.
So the fine line between art and customer service.
Yeah.
I think, okay, we've got another question. Go for it, sir.
Yeah, as Casper's not here, does white noise on a particular forum if they don't want to use Casper for your cover art, create your own stuff that you
just to explain
use yourself or to find new artists?
I mean,
do you want to just repeat the question so people can hear the back? And we should have had a roaming mic. Sorry about that.
Yes. I think the question was if we don't use Casper, because we all do, to make variant covers and stuff, do we have a forum for approaching artists?
yeah, I mean, Casper is busy as hell as well, especially now he's doing the new Peter Cannon book with Kieran Gillen for Dynamite, so that is taking up quite a lot of his time, funnily enough. But that's part of the joy of working as a unit is we've all worked with a lot of artists, and a lot of those artists know us as a unit. They don't tend to just know one of our works, they know us as a group. So there's always a huge pool of people we already know that we can sort of pull from, that we can talk to, that we can, there's a network.
And we're also always open to meeting new artists and new people that would be interested in collaborating with us.
Yeah, I think any writer working in comics spends at least some amount of their time just looking at other artists' work. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly have a very specific idea of what kind of look I want on a book when I have an idea in my head. And so I tend to sort of stroll the internet, if you will, looking at pieces of work, and sometimes I've approached artists who have never made comics before, but I really enjoy what they do with their art. And so I put out a book called Graffiti's Wall with this artist from India called Anand Radhakrishnan, who's never done a comic before, and his first book with me is 140 pages, so that was interesting. But you can look at his work, and I feel that it's certainly rare to see that kind of work in comics.
I mean, in terms of sort of hard, actual forums, I mean, one thing I would say is, everyone goes through DeviantArt, everyone goes through Behance, everyone's kind of always got one eye on there. But I mean, is it fair to say that if you put sequentials up there, you're going to get a lot more eyeballs on it?
Yeah.
I'd use Twitter more than anything else.
Right, interesting. There you go.
I found Val on DeviantArt. Val Rodriguez drew my Vault book, Deep Roots. Yeah. I found him from DeviantArt. He'd only done a single issue of like a Kickstarter book before, and he's just done 5 issues of that.
Yeah. But it's I think if it's something that this isn't confined to us, I think this is sort of across the board. Looking for artists, a lot of it is you can find someone who's an amazing illustrator, but if they're just putting up beautiful illustrations, there's no guarantee. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not gatekeepers, far from it, you know what I mean? But this is what, if you keep your ear to the ground, you can have the most beautiful illustration, but if you're not demonstrating storytelling, it's not going to be, people are still kind of taking a risk. So I'm going to say, if you put examples of if you put sequentials up, that's going to get a lot more eyeballs on it. If you want to work in comics, I mean, yeah, is that fair? Yeah.
Yes, that's really fair. Unfortunately, we have run out of time with these guys. I think when I started the panel, when I saw the panel title, I kind of came at it thinking this was going to be kind of like a gang like the Beatles, but it's almost a little bit more like Flaming Lips. It's more like The Fall. It's a little bit more looser. It's a little, no Ringo. Fair enough. Ladies and gents, if you could, if you want to put a round of applause for these fantastic guys up on the stage. Thank you.